Guy Ritchie without a doubt, is an auteur. One in which I used to absolutely love, and now, for my own personal opinion, has completely lost his sense of touch. And what did I think about his most recent film, The Gentleman? Well, let's find out. Okay, so The Gentleman, directed by Guy Ritchie, or The Gentleman, sorry. The Gentleman is the new film by Guy Ritchie, who we all know directed the wonderful classic that was Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, and of course Snatch. And from there on in, he's made movies that, from my opinion, are incredibly disappointing, right? Rock and Roller is a film that I didn't like when I first saw it. I sort of semi enjoyed it a second time, but I don't think it is any nearly as good or any more entertaining or as enjoyable as, say, Snatch or Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels, which is one of my favourite British films of all time, right? But yeah, Rock and Roller has been pretty much of a disappointment, and his style is increasingly becoming not obvious, but not quite fitting towards the narrative where he's trying to go at, right? And he's made, after Rock and Roller, he sort of went carrying on doing these blockbuster sort of movies like Sherlock Holmes, the two Sherlock Holmes with Robert Downey Jr., and then he's carried on making, and then after that he made I think it was King Arthur, which was okay, which was enjoyable but completely forgettable, despite a convincing Charlie Hunnam as the lead role as King Arthur. And he really went on ground zero, or completely rock bottom, for Aladdin, a pointless CGI remake of the absolute classic of the animation that was back then, starring Robin Williams and the stand-up performance as the genie. Here, it was, well, in the most recent Aladdin movie, it was replaced by one of my least favourite actors of all time, which is none other than Will Smith. I'll talk about my dislike of Will Smith in another video, but let's get down to The Gentleman, his most recent film, with starring also Charlie Hunnam, Matthew McConaughey. I've written down a couple of notes just in case I forget anything. So Colin Farrell, and a terrific performance, a brief but a performance that I would like to see more so of in other movies, by Hugh Grant. And what did I think of The Gentleman? Well, it's an enjoyable movie while it lasts, but ultimately incredibly flimsy, and lacks authenticity by its narrative, and very predictable. And it's the kind of film that goes into one huge solid cube that floats around my brain for the next 2 hours after the credits roll, but it explodes. It would explode in a million little pieces and turn into ash, right? It's a entertainingly enjoyable, flimsy, average movie, The Gentleman. It's okayishly made. It's very fast. It's typical Guy Ritchie. It's got the fast editing. There's the British gangsters. It's good to see him also going back to a genre that he's really well known for, like the crime streets of London, the gangsters, the really fast pacing editing, the pop sort of Tarantino-esque but British version of dialogue, and it's all there. But what is it that it lacks in comparison to Lock, Stock and Snatch? The first thing, like I said, is predictability. The main characters, played by Matthew McConaughey. The plot is basically Matthew McConaughey is like a gang boss with his right-hand man, played by Charlie Hunnam, and his he owns like a weed enterprise, well, a drug enterprise, where he stashes a lot of weed underground, and it gets stolen, and all kinds of bad luck happens. Right. The trouble is that it's not like these characters are, or they are pretty much, they're glamorized, but also that they come across as too perfect, to the point that you know these characters are going to make it through. You don't. It's not that sort of film where, like most of the most earliest Guy Ritchie films, you don't quite know within the characters who is going to live and who is going to die. This is a film where you know who is pretty much going to live and who is going to die, right? Even the opening sequence, I won't spoil anything, but there was a moment that happened, and for some reason I knew what was going to happen later on. It's a sequence, it's a flash forward sequence, and then the credits roll, the opening credits roll, right? And it's a nice opening credits to see. But later on, what happens, as the story progresses, you could pretty much tell that that opening sequence in the movie is going to be completely different because of the narrative that happens later on, because of how increasingly predictable it is made and how the story is conveyed and how it is told, you see. And so that is the reason why The Gentleman doesn't stand out as, say, Snatch and Lock, Stock. However, there is one terrific sequence in this movie involving Charlie Hunnam, right? Charlie Hunnam's character is like this tough guy, really intimidating right-hand man, and he plays this part perfectly. It suits him perfectly, as well as that the character of Hugh Grant's character. There's two good sequences, in fact. There's that one where there's the interaction between Hugh Grant and Charlie Hunnam, because it's lots of pop dialogue, and like it's like a ping pong of dialogue going on, and it's funny and it is gripping, and it's just a lot of fun to watch. And there's the second sequence, which is my favourite sequence of the film, is when basically one of the characters in the film's a really rich family's daughter, who's this proper junkie, who looks a lot like Kate Bosworth, by the way, gets kidnapped. Well, sort of per se kidnapped, or goes missing, and she's basically located in this high-rise building in like the scummy, chavvy streets of London, right? And the chavvy streets of London, and basically Charlie Hunnam is hired to basically find her and get her back, right? And he bumps into all these like rich, posh, despicably stereotypical British ignorant douchebag kid teenagers, right? And basically he intimidates them, and it's really satisfying to watch, right? And by mistake, one of the characters of these kids dies, right, in the most funniest fashion, right? And it's a lot of fun to watch. It's a massive blast, and then after that, a chase sequence happens, right, involving Charlie Hunnam and a bunch of other chavs, basically, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And I wish that the entire movie played out like this sort of roller coaster, a crime thriller with an ounce of black comedy going on, but a really strong sense of who is going to live and who is going to die type of thing. And that is what the problem was with the rest of the film. It's just too cliched, and it goes from plot twist to next plot twist to the point that you could see what is going to happen in the later scenes after, because of the way the plot twists are conveyed and conceived, right? With too much overuse of a rock and roll soundtrack that is going on, especially towards the end, where I won't spoil anything, but let's just put it this way: it ends pretty much like look at me, like a little bit like the Ocean's 11s and the 12s movies, too cool and too stylish for its own actual good, basically, right? It's an incredibly stylish film, and it is a really cool film, and the fashion design is absolutely incredibly like cool and just stylish to watch. It's very nice to watch this film. They're wearing like long coats, you know,
really warming up now, isn't it?
There's only one rule in this jungle. When the lion's hungry, he eats.
So about fighting, and he's really funny, and he's really fun to watch as well. All the performances pretty much are all fine, right? Some even say that Matthew McConaughey is actually really average. I thought he was fine, and he suited the role neatly. In fact, there were moments I was in fact intimidated by him, which recalls some of his best roles, such as Killer Joe from Matthew McConaughey, right? But Hugh Grant is also an incredible standout. He doesn't, because usually with Hugh Grant, he plays back then anyway, he would play that romantic pretty boy, right? And in this case, he's playing like this grimy, gritty sort of gangster type private detective, right? And he sort of pulls off an accent, and it just works perfectly. It's not that far off similar to Adam Sandler's performance in Uncut Gems. However, I would love to see Hugh Grant pull off this sort of material even more so, and I can't wait to see Hugh Grant playing a role like that in the future, because I would be so there, right? But unfortunately, as a whole in general, The Gentleman was not an underwhelming but a sort of predictable experience to watch. I kind of knew what I was going in for when going in to watch this movie, which unfortunately left me rather like, yeah, that was fun, but not much else after that. It was enjoyable while it lasted. but it has too many predictable flaws within not only its storytelling, but the way it's been edited and its craft and its tone, and it comes across pretty much as, especially with the central characters, they come across, they're too perfect to the point that they are like superheroes in a weird way. It sounds strange to say, but what I mean by that is the fact that they're going to live, they're going to make it, and they're going to stop the bad guys who are stopping them despite them being criminals. They're not far off from the characters of the Fast and Furious films. They don't have the muscle or the like physical strength or the slick methods of their driving or anything like that, right? They are pretty much like realistic people in comparison to those characters, right? But they are overly glamorized to the point that we know that they are going to make it through, and it's just like, yeah, you could see where it's going to end despite you don't know what the plot is about yet. And as the plot goes through and through and through, and its plot twists just come up, and how the story goes from one scene to the next, and how that goes, and how the atmosphere connects to that one, and the light atmosphere that happens. I just wished the film was much more about like how is, let's say, Colin Farrell, if it took his time a little bit, how is Colin Farrell going to walk up to the next scene? Is he going to make it through? I just needed a sense of maybe at any point he might get shot in the face, right? Or something like, say, The Departed by Martin Scorsese. That is a crime thriller, but that has got less comedy. It's not like Guy Ritchie or anything, The Departed. It's very like Scorsese, but that is a film where there are so many characters in that movie, but in the same time, it's a really profoundly unpredictable movie, especially towards the end, which features, which we all know, the infamous elevator scene, which is like an uncompromising gut to the punch, right? Of how shocking and how unexpected that was, and you feel the sense of shock. And The Gentlemen needed much more of that, a sense of, whoa, I did not see that happening, and that literally makes you drawn in to what is going on if something like that happened either halfway or towards the end of the movie, to make you even like it by how unexpected and how drawn in to what you're watching. A little bit like the Game of Thrones, in the sense that you don't know who's going to live, you don't know who's going to die, maybe a favourite character of yours will die or whatnot, and that makes you very, very into the experience of watching that movie. So that is the reason why The Gentlemen, unfortunately, as with most recent Guy Ritchie movies, are just, I mean, it's way better than, let's say, Aladdin and the Sherlock Holmes films, right? And even got King Arthur, but he needs to be better within telling his story and and have a little bit of spice going on within his plot. It's too flimsy. It's too overly glamorous for its characters, and he needs to settle that down a little bit and bring back his older craft, which what he brings into films like Snatch and Lock, Stock, right? So yeah, I give The Gentlemen a 2.5 out of 5, and I wish that Guy Ritchie just does better, basically, next time. So yeah, if you liked my video, press subscribe here down below, and if you want to see my French review of the movie, well, it will just be right up after this one. I'll literally post it after I've done posting this one. So thank you, have a good time, and ciao!